What's up guys, I'm Prailey and welcome to my 20% project. For my project, I decided to research VFX, also known as visual effects, in movies and explain how they work and the history of VFX and how it's evolved over the many years it's been around. Also, disclaimer, this is a school project, so none of the content in this video is mine. I do not take credit for any of it, so all rights go to Marvel and Lucasfilm and any other franchise used within this video. Let's jump into how modern VFX works. Visual effects are a kind of special effect that is added to a film in post-production as computer-generated imagery. Now what that means, you will figure out over the course of this video. Visual effects go through different stages of production, called the VFX pipeline, which is needed to apply visual effects to a film. Films are divided into 3 different stages: pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is where the film is being developed. This is where scripts are written and actors are hired. So this is like when you get a notification on Twitter saying, "Oh my goodness, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland are going to be in Pixar's new movie Onward," and literally the whole world is freaking out. That's pre-production. Production is where the filming takes place. I think this step is kind of obvious as to what's happening, so I don't think I need to explain much further.
Nod if you understand.
Post-production will be our primary focus. This is the process where visual effects are applied to the footage, sound is added and edited, color grading takes place, and then finally, the film is distributed.
Yes!
So there are 11 main steps to the pipeline, even though the website I used said there were 10. Anyways, the first step of this is the story. This is the part where the characters, setting, and story are created. The script is being written and different ideas for the plot are being explored. The next step is storyboarding and animatics. This is where artists and different creative teams are making visual representations of the actions within the script. Next up is previs. In this step, animators make 3D low-resolution models of different scenes so the directors and cameramen can figure out what camera angles to use, and they decide which scenes are too complex for the final product. Up next is concept art and design. I'm sure most of you have seen concept art for a number of different movies, but you may not know what it's actually used for. Concept art is made by a team of artists to create the mood and lighting of the film. These define the characters, settings, costumes, lighting, color, and so much more. Following concept art is the layout and production design. The goal of this is to have a visual representation of what the set will look like, and it will give directors and others working on the film an idea of what can and can't be built on set. For the VFX team, this step helps define what digital sets might be incorporated in post-production. Next in line is research and development. During this stage, lots of visual effects supervisors work with directors to figure out how to accomplish certain shots. Specifically, if there is a certain type of explosion needed for a scene, like a missile, then the VFX artist would research the missile and its explosions to see how the fire and smoke behave so they could recreate it in post-production. The next step is 3D modeling and texturing. The teams who work on this are able to create things that aren't practical or cost-effective while on set. They can create things like props and buildings, but there are also different characters they can create if an actor is in a motion capture suit, which is also called a mocap suit. Next is rigging and animating. Before a character like the Hulk can be created, a rigging team has to build a set of controls, like a digital skeleton, for the animator to use. This helps create a natural movement in the character, and it will really bring them to life. The mocap suits are used here as well, because the motion capture data is interpreted to create the animated characters. Next up is FX simulation. FX is just the effects part of visual effects. These artists are responsible for making things like smoke, fire, and water, and making them look realistic. Next in line is lighting and rendering. Each lighting and rendering team makes sure all the lighting is accurate within each shot of VFX, and they can also add different lighting if needed. The lighting artists strategically place lights throughout each 3D scene to ensure that all the lighting, colors, and shadows show up in the original places. And finally, compositing. This is where compositors take all of the elements of the film and layer them on top of each other. They are able to make the illusion that it all naturally belongs. Alright, so what is the difference between special effects and visual effects?
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So you know what VFX is because hopefully you watched the beginning of this video. Special effects, also known as SFX, are what happens in the real world physically and not within a computer like visual effects are. Some examples of special effects could be gunshot wounds or stage knives.
Let me see what you have! No!
Special effects are believed to add more emotion to scenes because the actors are really experiencing what's happening to them. But visual effects can take us to places we can never dream of and allow us to meet different people and creatures we could only find in books and stories. Nowadays, VFX and SFX are almost the same. VFX is just without the actual physical effects part. The period between the early 1900s to the mid-1970s is known as the photochemical era or the pre-digital age.
Are you yawning? In the middle of this while I'm breaking it down? Huh? Did you hear what I said?
Stop listening after you said we need a plan.
Okay guys, we made it. It's history time. If you haven't figured it out by now, Star Wars: A New Hope was the first movie to use visual effects. George Lucas created the company Industrial Light and Magic, also known as ILM, to accomplish his vast idea that was Star Wars. At the time, when directors and effects artists read his script, they thought it was very daunting. But ILM was able to advance the traditional techniques that were already around at this time, like miniature models and matte painting. ILM isn't the only VFX company around, but they started the VFX Renaissance, so that's why I'm going to be focusing on them for the rest of this video. Because of his great success, George Lucas created Lucasfilm, and he immediately started working on The Empire Strikes Back. In 1979, Ed Catmull was hired by Lucasfilm, and he created a very important technological advancement, which allowed filmmakers to create smooth curved surfaces and wrap textures around them. This is known as CG, or computer generation. The next two big blockbuster films that came out from Lucasfilm were Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Trek: Wrath of Khan. Indiana Jones advanced technology that made music along with the film, and Star Trek was the first motion picture to create a visual effects shot on the computer, and it took 5 months to create this first sequence. 3 years later, young Sherlock Holmes created the first computer-generated character in a motion picture, The Stained Glass Knight. It then went on to become nominated and win an Academy Award for Best Computer Animation. Some of the CG and computer animation technology that was created by the late 1980s was Renderman, which was created by a software company called Pixar. Now you may recognize the name Pixar from its very popular movie franchises like Toy Story and Monsters, Inc., but what you may not know is that it was originally part of Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm had to sell off their group that used the Pixar software in order to get enough money for their project of a full-length animation film. This group was originally created by Steve Jobs of Apple, called Next, which eventually became Pixar. The Pixar software enabled this group to create their first animated short film, Andre and Molly B, and they went on to make Toy Story as their first full-length animation film. Because their Pixar software was gone, a separate CG group within ILM was also created. This started a movement of live-action VFX characters within a film. After Abyss came out in 1989, VFX characters started becoming more common, like in Terminator 2. Terminator 2 was a pivotal film in the evolution of VFX because this was the first time that laser scanning technology was used. This allowed them to model an animated version of the character rather than building one in the computer from scratch. The next turning point in film animation was Jurassic Park. The VFX artists were originally going to use stop-motion animation to create the dinosaurs, but they realized that using CG was much easier than trying to make the dinosaurs run at the same pace in stop motion. Both life-sized models and VFX-created dinosaurs were used throughout the movie. Alright guys, we have reached a celebratory time because we have made it to ILM's 100th movie, Jumanji.
That's our girl.
Yes, Queen!
The VFX artists used some of the work they did on Jurassic Park and applied it to the different elephants, rhinos, and other animals seen throughout the movie. In 1999, The Matrix improved slow-motion technology that was created in the early 1900s. They slowed down their footage to show the characters dodging bullets, which hadn't been done before.
If you can play something slowly, you can play it quickly.
For The Phantom Menace, George Lucas doubled the size of the VFX department. Characters like Yoda and Jar Jar Binks were completely CG, which started the idea that CG characters could interact with people more. Although, Yoda wasn't made CG until 2011 with the Blu-ray release of the movie. In 2001, Lord of the Rings was the first film to really use mocap suits. Gollum was played by Andy Serkis, and he had 13 cameras pointed at sensors to capture his movements. The motion capture technology and animation got each of the Lord of the Rings films an Academy Award. Transformers made a more realistic and cooler type of animation than had been done previously. At first, VFX artists made the robots out of alien parts, but they realized it didn't look very realistic, so they went with car parts instead. Overall, there are about 10,000 parts to each Transformer. The VFX for Iron Man was actually built off of Transformers because of the metal needed for the Iron Man suits. The director, Jon Favreau, who also plays Happy Hogan, was skeptical about the CGI because he didn't like how it had been done before. But the VFX team was able to convince him that they could make the Iron Man suit look realistic. The only problem with the Iron Man suit during production was that Robert Downey Jr. didn't find wearing the actual suit comfortable, so they ended up just making him wear a mocap suit. What's cool about this movie's VFX team is that they were able to create a real life-sized Iron Man suit based off the CGI version of it. The VFX team working on Avatar was able to make a breakthrough when director James Cameron teamed up with Sony to make a new camera system. This allowed them to capture the actors' faces and facial expressions for them to animate later. Avatar soon went on to become the highest grossing film of all time because the VFX was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Even more modern films like Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame have the most advanced VFX that you can imagine. Even in the 1-year gap between those two movies, the technology used to create the Hulk and Thanos was vastly improved to add even smaller details on their faces and in their expressions. In Infinity War, there was a total of 2,623 VFX shots, but 80 of those weren't even used in the final cut. Statistically, 97% of the movie is VFX. Let's compare that to Jurassic Park. There's about 14 minutes of dinosaur footage, but only about 4 minutes was actual VFX. Infinity War was 2.5 hours long, and Endgame was over 3 hours long. 4 minutes to 3 hours is an insane difference, but that only shows how much it's improved over time. Before I let you go, I'm going to play a few minutes of some cool VFX breakdowns I found, so I hope y'all enjoy.
I'll change a channel. No, that's the remote for the VCR. No, this is the remote for the stereo. No, this is the one for the CD player. No, this is the garage door opener. This is a calculator. Where's the remote for the TV? Ah, you found it. Here, 2 seconds till doomsday.
The beginning of kind of working with CG creatures. Because I remember at one point there's a wall blew open and then a guy came through. He's the rhino. Okay. And that's run away from the rhino. And that was the beginning of kind of, okay, imagine now that's the rhino, the one on the right is an elephant. Phil is the hippopotamus. Okay, good. Okay, I got it. Let's do this.
Run! It's a stampede!
basically it's just fight or flight. Most of the time you're just running. It's not a creature that's, having a dialogue. It's nothing that's talking to you. It's basically chasing you or confronting you or running from you, or you're both in a state of fear. I was amazed by all the larger creatures were insanely beautiful. And I found out that they had taken some of the programs from Jurassic Park and applied them to elephants and rhinos. And they're working you through going, you can't go there, you have to look over there. And they're going, literally, this area is a no-go. Especially if you're thinking, well, can I run over there? No. Why? That's a pit. Okay, cool.
4. It's a twister! It's a twister!
The Wizard of Oz presented a lot of very, very interesting problems, and the tornado was one of the toughest, naturally, that we had faced. We didn't quite know what to do, and it was finally resolved by building a funnel out of muslin, and it was about 30-some-odd feet in length.
The muslin funnel was filmed spinning over a miniature farm landscape. As it moved, the funnel kicked up fine powder, producing the illusion of a powerful whirlwind. To show Dorothy's house crash landing in Oz, he dropped a miniature onto a painted floor covered by clouds of dry ice. Then he printed the shot in reverse. After landing, Dorothy opened the door to one of the most fantastic worlds in cinema history.
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Dorothy was filmed in some of the largest sets ever built, but many were not as large as they seemed. The yellow brick road that appears to stretch forever actually went about 40 feet. The rest is a painting created by Gillespie's team. To place Dorothy within painted surroundings, a cardboard cutout, or mat, was placed in front of the camera before the actors were filmed. This ensured that only the live-action part of the film negative would be exposed. The painting was shot using the same piece of film and a companion cutout. Within the camera, this produced a seamless blend between background and actors. Gillespie used such invisible visual effects to take audiences to a world that still enchants viewers.
Your arm straight down, and we'll put your arm in digitally and just do everything else with your body, but don't actually throw. Oh, you're the man. Do it, yeah. More hip. More hip. Cut. It's pretty good.
Cut, thank you.
I like the chicken wing, too.
Thank you.